Today's episode will be a tribute to the late great director David Lynch. This is I Have No Title and I Must podcast. We're your hosts, Tyler
and Chris.
And though he might not be everyone's cup of tea, he definitely was ours. And I know his health had been declining for a while, but part of me was hoping for at least one more movie. So to hear his passing, it's been kind of sad.
Yeah, it was pretty gut-wrenching, though not necessarily unexpected, as he did announce he had, I believe it was emphysema, and that he was, I guess, like on kind of semi-permanent quarantine. He was just staying put in his house and then had to be relocated due to the fires, was the last update that I'd gotten that was made public for some reason. And then suddenly...
Nah, man, where to start with this one?
It is hard to say if there's going to be probably, well, our core audience, who knows who's listening, the 13 people who I think regularly come back. Are they Lynch fans? Because most people, one thing that has brought joy to me in the past week, and this I made a post about this, is I made it about myself because it was really difficult. Nobody knows who this guy is. And when I say that, I mean, he's an avant-garde filmmaker, and everybody says, oh, he's made some of the best movies of the 20th and 21st centuries. But when you go into a room, there's a film student I work with. We were talking about it. I hadn't seen him in a week. We were talking about it yesterday. And I said, yes, everybody's talking about it online. Now find me one other person in this building right now who even knows who he is. We couldn't do it. So, like, by and large, it's like cinephiles, people who like extreme cinema and films. And David Lynch isn't necessarily everybody. Like you said, he's not everybody's cup of tea. When he started, he was making, borderline unwatchable experimental cinema. His student films, his short films are indescribable, like unnerving, and you have to really want to sit and watch those.
That's what always kind of gets me, though, when people are like, oh, avant-garde. I'm like, yeah, maybe to the lay person, but I don't know that I would consider that necessarily avant-garde, maybe adjacent. But when you go and look at the real avant-garde stuff, it's like, let's slowly move this camera towards this door as painfully slow as possible for the next 30 minutes. That's some avant-garde stuff.
Well, like Eraserhead.
Yeah, maybe.
Eraserhead is maybe avant-garde. The one, like, people lean their heads back and just start, like, I don't know, making noises for no reason. Like, it's in...
I don't know. I guess it's just my personal take that I draw the line at avant-garde is when it starts getting harder for me to actually sit down and be like, okay, I gotta stop.
Oh, okay. Well, but I think there's a demarcation line between like regular people and, a psychotic person that's sitting in front of me. That's, not to say that I'm not. It's like I get asked, why do I listen to Scott Walker? Why do I listen to jazz at all? And it's like, not to say that normal music is boring, but it's not challenging, and the need to understand something beyond something, or why somebody would make, somebody who has no music, and this isn't Scott Walker, but say somebody like Daniel Johnston or like Jandek would make music when it's, things that are considered outsider music, and it's somehow revered. Where is it just bad, or is it misunderstood? And then you go into like talking about Picasso and maybe David Lynch. I think a lot of people would say some of his films are impenetrable, and some of them are pretty straightforward. Not necessarily. It's something with like little to no dialogue and a monstrous fetus-like entity and borderline no plot and random imagery to the point of nonsensical. It's sensical, I am certain, to David Lynch, our dearly departed David Lynch. And I think his greatest gift to the world or cinema at large is that his films are up for debate. Not all of them, but let's say like, Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, and Inland Empire. And I think that the 18 hours of the Twin Peaks: The Return, to a larger extent, so much so that they require multiple watches, or would invite that to the point where you're not going to get everything upon one watch. So you return to it. It's not like I've seen Citizen Kane and it's good. I don't know that I would say it's the greatest film ever made from then to now.
Everyone should watch it, but I agree.
And I'm not saying I'll never watch it again, but it is a bit longer, so it's a commitment to get into. Just like whenever you sit down and you say you're going to watch The Lord of the Rings or the extended edition.
But you can get everything you need to get from one viewing.
Yeah. I don't necessarily feel the need to go back and say, what did I miss in Citizen Kane? I was fortunate enough, it's one of those films. There's certain classic films that I've just never ended up watching. You miss it or whatever, and then you run into somebody and you're like, yeah, I've never seen The Karate Kid or whatever. And you're, how did you never see that? And it just kept not happening. Everybody else saw it, and then I didn't, and then I just never sat down and watched this specific film or whatever. So this one year I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch it this year. I'm gonna get it. I'm going to watch it. And then I got it. And then I found out a few months from then, they were going to have it as an anniversary in the theaters. I think, I can't remember if it was 2023 or 2022. I can't remember what anniversary it was. I'm not looking at any information right now. But I got the opportunity to see it in a theater. So I saw the way it was intended to be seen, and it was most likely restored to some highest quality of what's available. So that was really fortunate. But again, I got everything I could get from that, I think. Having said that, the 18 hours, which is kind of, one chunk of a thing that he decided to do, he could have made 6 hours, a lot of shows are doing limited series of 6 episodes, 1 hour, or maybe even 42 minutes or 45. Some are doing 8 or 10. I can't remember was Skeleton Crew 8 episodes?
Maybe.
I think it's
I've not gotten through Skeleton
something
Crew
like
yet.
that, and Creature Commandos.
That was 7, yeah.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
And those were the Creature Commandos were shorter episodes because it's animated. Doctor Who for a long time was basically 12 episodes for a season, and then you got a Christmas episode that kind of counted with the season, rounding it out to a 13 episode run, and then starting the cycle over again. I think the most recent ones have been much shorter, even though they gave them more money. So he could have done that. He didn't. It was long and, some of that impenetrable. It's so far up to interpretation to say, the stuff with the fireman, the frog moth. Some people might say, oh, yeah, it's obvious.
Is it?
Yeah, that's what I would say is to you, that is yet again the narcissistic mind at play, someone who thinks that they are never wrong and right immediately, that this is so painfully obvious to them. Because when I watched Lost Highway, I had an immediate theory before the end. Once all the clues had basically been given, all this stuff, you've gotten all the major pieces. And I said, okay, there's this. And then I went to go see what some other people had said, because I did not see this in the 90s. And I recently went back and looked at some other theories, and damn, nobody had the same idea that I did. And then I was like, was I just way off? Not to say that I couldn't be, but then a lot of their theory, one guy's in particular, was very compelling. Other people ignore everything that the clues he was looking at, and look at a completely different way. So that's what I love about this, is it's up for eternal debate, even so much as our debate about how far is too far.
Yeah.
I don't think it is too far, except for the student films, which I think, you got to walk before you can run.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to make something like that enjoyable. The one, I just want to throw this one out, because I don't want to make this episode about this. I just want to say, the thing that I'd started off with my post being about how it was it felt like mine, because so few of my friends, there's you, but so few other people love David Lynch in the way that when I discovered him and really got into it, that I loved his work. and felt like, like this is my secret thing because nobody gets it. Until you go online where, like everything has its subculture, and he definitely has that. But I didn't post anything immediately. And I was actually with Allison in the car eating lunch, and I was eating and she was scrolling, and then the news must have just hit because I hadn't seen anything and there wasn't anything prior to that. And I think it was from like the Lynch Foundation or one of the things that broke it. And then, she told me, and it was a blow, but it wasn't a massive shock because I knew he was ill. And I mean, he's like 79, I think, or 60. Was he?
I think he's 78. I might be remembering that wrong.
So he was a bit older, and
a lifelong smoker.
Yeah, and though there were recent rumors that he was going to do something in the past few years that was maybe the next chapter of something Twin Peaks or Twin Peaks adjacent, which would probably not, when I thought about that, even at the time a few years ago, I was like, well, it's probably not going to be what we want. It's going to be what he wants to do, which isn't going to be a nice, tidy wrap up. It's going to be probably like Fire Walk With Me, which goes in a completely different direction with new characters. So, but I'm up for it. Whatever it is, let's see it. But after I spent a few days looking through Instagram and other social media, it was nonstop people posting images, photos of him, their memories of loving his work, or the celebrities that I follow on those things talking about either having worked with him or just loving his work. Like Guillermo del Toro, he was saying he was so nervous around him he couldn't speak to him, and how much he loved his work, and how earnest he was, and how he was just like this real person, not like all these fake Hollywood people that like he believed completely in, showing the dark side of, because there was a lot of darkness in his movies, but so that you could have the dichotomy of the goodness of Americana and the apple pie and the, fire trucks coming to rescue people, and the, like opening images of Blue Velvet, basically, until the ear. And if you don't, go watch it. Watch all of these films. Unless you're squeamish, don't watch Eraserhead. So, yeah. And you know what? Even as of like this morning, I'm still seeing new posts. It was almost a week later, and Danny Elfman finally made a post, the composer. And it's like, and of course, in Hollywood, they're burning. It's, if you're listening to this in the future, you don't know exactly when David Lynch died. It's during the crisis of all the fires in California, in that area. So there's a lot of displaced people, some of whom maybe just haven't had time to take the time and write something or post something. Some people just posted a photo and left it at that. I think some people maybe intended to when they could have the time, and maybe for some people it's really emotional because he did seem to be such a genuine real person. And I'm still seeing posts come out, and still seeing people dealing with it and paying tribute and saying like how much his work meant to me, or how much he meant to me as an artist. Or
because I know Kyle MacLachlan specifically said that Lynch pretty much handed him his career, and wholly thanks him for that.
Yeah, handed it to him and helped him hold on to it, because he got Dune. He put him in Dune, but then Dune was not well received, and then put him in Blue
You could argue
Velvet.
that Dune isn't really Lynch's movie. Even Lynch would say...
Yeah, he more or less...
It was Dino De Laurentiis, who was the producer of the movie, held Lynch on a very, very short leash and pretty much had full control over it. So, like, to say he wrote and directed it is in name only.
Yeah, so, and not putting Dune on Lynch, we'll never do that. Do not hold me to it. But even, like, maybe just the cool parts. Because he had some cool ideas for it, but yeah, there was studio interference, and he always said after that, if you can't have Final Cut, if you can't have creative control, why do something at all? If you're even taking a chance or a risk on making something and then having somebody else just Jackson Pollock all over your Starry Night, why did you work so hard for years in some cases? He worked on Eraserhead for like 5 or 6 years. And if somebody else came along in the end and just re-edited it, he would have blown his brain out. He probably wouldn't have. But he would have felt like it, and he would have had extreme language like that to say like, that's how I would have felt, because that's how he's talked about like other films, and if you can't get that, don't do it. Don't even attempt it. So he
little quick aside, that's something I never understood. If you're not going to let a particular like artist, apply their trade, why hire them in the first place? So like, why hire someone like Lynch, knowing his work, because this wasn't his first movie? Why hire him for Dune if you weren't going to let him run with it?
Yeah. Which you should tell the anecdote about, like, when he made Eraserhead, it actually got released, which if you see Eraserhead, that's crazy to think about, like, that it wasn't just underground.
Yeah.
Like, bootlegged and stuff out of, like, his car trunk or something. They actually released it, and there's footage of people coming out and talking about what they just saw. Some people loved it, a lot of people didn't understand it, and some people hated it. And the people who loved it, I don't know that if you just immediately say like, oh well, it's about this, bro. I don't know if you watched it. Like you gotta really take this in before you make a decision on this.
I think that's the key to really enjoying Lynch's work, is to accept that you're never going to understand it.
Yeah, because there's like some of the abstract surreal imagery is just that. I don't think that it's quite like Dali with that other filmmaker he teamed up with to make that movie that was specifically designed to have zero meaning. That they combined.
Was it Thomas Anger? He does a lot of weird stuff like that.
I have to look it up. It's the one where the woman gets her eye slit open in the film, and everything was meant to be random image after random image combined, so that it literally had zero meaning. And some people say, like, due to the nature of that, there is meaning, or they did have something in mind when they did this. And I think who can say? Who would speak for Dali? But I do think it is possible to approach something in such a zen-like state if Dada is your goal to attain this. Having said that, I think Lynch went in with his work the opposite. I think he went in with specific ideas, specific goals, and meaning behind everything, but refused to tell anyone what it was. Sometimes I think it is actually fairly obvious. Some of his movies are fairly straightforward. Mel Brooks was looking to produce movies that were darker, more dramatic, and slightly horror-driven, and he had the rights to The Elephant Man, this Elephant Man script, and they were looking for a director. He went and saw Eraserhead, and they told David, Mel Brooks is in there watching Eraserhead, and he's considering you for, to be the director of The Elephant Man. And he said, well, fellas, it was good knowing you. And Mel Brooks comes out of the theater and embraced David and said, you're a madman. I love you. You've got the role. You've got the job. And he made The Elephant Man and went on from there to get, like, maybe the biggest mistake, Dune, by not having full creative control and final cut, but then made sure that I'm not going to do it if I can't get that, held to his guns, and made Blue Velvet. They say there's, like, maybe another hour of lost footage that we don't have. I know there's I can't remember if it's an hour and a half of deleted scenes that I've not watched. I have watched all the deleted scenes from Fire Walk with Me, because you could take that movie and cut it up so many different ways. Somebody has reinserted. There used to be a bootleg version where somebody reinserted all the deleted scenes back into the film. Some of them are not contradictory, but there's different versions in that 90 minutes that are so you've got the same scene that's in the movie, but it is kind of a different version because it leads into what is basically an extended deleted portion of the scene. And so you couldn't have those two overlapped unless it's a Lynch film, and then why not? Because sometimes he just decides to do certain things like that.
It's it's up for you to decide what's real.
Yeah. Just like in Mulholland Drive, there's two movies in there.
Essentially, yeah.
Two versions, or two overlaying versions. It's more layered, and there's a lot to it. Very similar with Lost Highway. Duality seems to be a major theme in a lot of his films, even with something like Blue Velvet, where you have these two characters in there, the Dennis Hopper character and the Kyle MacLachlan character, who are opposite ends on a spectrum, something that is chaotic evil and somebody that's lawful good or something. Those are rough estimates, by the way. Your mileage may vary, but you get what I'm saying. And those two are the duality in that film. And you even have a duality in female characters in there too. So, which are possibly even more important than the Kyle MacLachlan character, to see those two female characters and how he interacts with them. And so, yeah. The one thing I trailed off a bit ago, but I didn't want to make this be like a focal point. But the one thing that nobody is talking about and nobody ever talks about is how David Lynch is obviously on the spectrum. And I don't know why that doesn't come up. Because I feel like he's going to become like a mythic folk hero to the autistic community. He was probably not diagnosed, I assume. But like, I've never seen like a more obvious display of this, despite what the language is changing yet again with the needs argument, like high functioning versus like low needs or something. I don't know. I get really disheartened when I hear this, because I told somebody recently it's going to change again. Like eventually being called either just autistic or like on the spectrum, that'll be offensive.
Yeah.
It'll be the same. And then they disagreed with me. This person was also on the spectrum. She was like, no. And I'm like, no, it's like every 10 or 15 years you live with something or whatever, and then they'll change it to say like, well, now we're recognizing it as this. Whereas, I mean, like some things feel more so offensive, and I can understand wanting to change that. But like once we get to like a certain level, it's okay, I think. Let me tell you, none of it feels good. Like if you had a black friend and you just introduced him as like, hey, this is my black friend, like he'd probably be like, hey man, you don't got to do all that. That would be weird.
It's like you can just say friend.
Yeah. And if you introduced somebody as like, hey, this is my friend. They're autistic, so, be cool. Like, I'm still standing right here. I'm not deaf, so I can't hear you. And that was kind of weird. Are you sure you're not on this? Oh, you are too. Well, that explains it. We're all just a little weird. David being the epitome of this, I think, and in not just his filmmaking, but his life. And Laura Dern, I think, she told the story of like meeting Kyle MacLachlan and going out to, I think it was the Bob's Big Boy. That was like their famous hangout spot where he would go and get milkshakes. He was already good friends with Kyle MacLachlan. They invite Laura Dern out. They're sitting there and she said, David was like commenced to doodling away on something, and then Kyle was just like taking his knife and pushing his ketchup around, kind of drawing in his ketchup. And she was like, I was at a crossroads there. I could have walked away from this completely mortified, or fall in love with both of these guys and work with them forever and ever. And she obviously chose that. So I am paraphrasing a lot of that. I don't remember her direct quotes, but that is extremely close to what she said. And it was very, very endearing. They created such a good work atmosphere for the actors. And I think that's why, especially in Mulholland Drive, I don't know if nobody has said this, I would be completely surprised. It's kind of his Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
Calling out like some of the seedy underbelly of the industry that he has worked in and has been such an integral part of his life, where he says, like, it's rough out here. And it's shady and weird, and there are a lot of bad people who do bad things and require people to do bad things just to get a job. I don't think he was necessarily calling out Weinstein, but there's a lot of that subculture in there. And there's probably still Weinsteins out there, not specific Weinsteins, but people who do just that, that haven't been caught yet. And every woman that has worked with Lynch is like, he is the opposite of that. It was such a safe place to work with him, even though, his movies are so dark that sometimes they are uncomfortable at times. But even with that, nobody has had anything bad to say about him on a personal level. Like, you think other people don't make movies like that and are probably far less respectful while making them. Apparently, while making, I believe it was Blue Velvet, David never said the word during the making process. The actors did. Apparently, Dennis Hopper said in every line of dialogue that he had. But
Didn't Dennis also like take a lot of improvisational liberties?
I would say so.
Yeah.
David also, he would just point to the word on the script. Dennis Hopper thought this was hilarious later when telling the story. And I know that David doesn't mind using profanity, but he said that the film itself was so heavy, he didn't want to contribute to it, especially behind the scenes. That's the kind of... we need more of that kind of energy in the world. Not necessarily somebody like overthinking something to that level, but just wanting to make the world a better place in your own small way, just for the sake of it, not to get attention. I didn't hear that story. I didn't hear David Lynch tell that story.
Yeah.
It was other people. He doesn't go around telling people how awesome he was or anything like that. He would say, let's make this place a better place. He didn't say, let's make this place a better place because I need to look good and give me credit for that. So
yeah, I think if he wanted to look good, he would have made more mainstream movies.
Yeah, I think so. And it would have been after he had attained a certain level of clout, he easily could have. He could have made whatever he wanted. He was so well respected and revered, especially by other directors. He could have gotten, like, if he wanted, he could have had a vastly different career. He was up for things like, Return of the Jedi, or I can't remember if it was Return of the Jedi or the middle one, Empire Strikes Back. It might have been Empire Strikes Back, but
that would have been an interesting Star Wars movie.
Turned it down and probably got a lot of other offers over the years for things. He had ideas that he wanted to make that are still unrealized, like the Ronnie Rocket weird thing, but instead decided to make Inland Empire and Twin Peaks, which it still baffles me how that 18 hours of Twin Peaks got made, like the return. That's crazy. But I'm so glad that it had the money that it had behind it. So, yeah. I
was going to say, like, my biggest debate on Lynch films this is obviously for the people that enjoy it, because if you don't, you're never going to even think this way. But after you watch a movie of his, do you let it digest or do you instantly watch it again?
I have to digest it. I have been tempted by things. Now, some of them are on the longer side, too, making it more difficult to want to immediately go back into it. But it demands that you do at some point. I need to sit with it for a while and really think it through, see what I can make of it this time, and then maybe discuss it with some people, overanalyze it, and then go back. Do you have the inclination to watch it again immediately?
I have the inclination, but I never have. Because it's always like what I miss. I miss something, clearly.
Yeah. There are literally things like, there are times Allison, will like look away and I'm like, oh, and then she's like, what did I miss? I'm like going back, and the mystery man weird guy's face is on the woman's body, like in bed with Fred in Lost Highway. It's like, that guy, he's... I don't know what this means, but it ain't good. So, yeah, there's no way. You blink, you don't know what you're missing when you blink. Blink at different intervals when you watch the movie the next time. You might miss it again. You can't, they're not movies where you can be doing two things. There's movies that you can kind of, do housework.
Yeah.
And take in the core substance of it. I'm sure Varsity Blues or some other like Michael Bay films, like, oh man, did I miss the 76th explosion that just happened? I'm sure that's integral to the plot, but not to say like all of his films are complete and utter whatever. But the Lynch film requires some thought and depth and exploration to be fully absorbed. And again, you're not going to take everything in the first time. And that's why, like, I've not watched Twin Peaks The Return a second time. And then Allison asked me the other night, like, when are we going to eventually watch Twin Peaks again? And I was like, I don't know. It's an undertaking, but which all things considered, like the first 2 seasons are not that long.
No.
I don't think. It's not like a full 20 some odd episodes like a normal season, is it?
I think the first one at least is. I think it's around 20, 22.
And then
I don't know what the second season is.
The movie and then the 18 episodes. So it's not like... Because we're actually watching Deep Space Nine right now, which is like full on like 80s, 90s kind of like that length of the number of episodes per season.
I think with Twin Peaks, because it's what, 1990 that came out? Something around there?
Yeah.
So I think it was that standard, like, 20-some episodes. I don't know if the second season was, because they're like, this is a little weird for TV.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. Is there any other aspects of things, any specific details in some movies you wanted to?
I don't know, because there's definitely gaps. As much as I love Lynch, there are gaps in my viewings. Not from lack of trying. They are hard to track down sometimes.
Yeah, some of them are.
It's like there's not a lot of reprints, and the people that have them don't want to let them go.
Mm-hmm. There's some things, like when you go to, say, a half-price books or some used movie store, some movies always seem to be there.
Yeah.
And certain ones never there. Certain directors, like, so hard to find their work. And he's one of them. That's like, if you find it, snatch it up.
Yeah, I looked up and found Blue Velvet and Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway.
Yeah.
I had to break down and buy the Criterion of Inland Empire.
Yep.
But Wild at Heart, I've never seen a used copy out.
I haven't either. Or the Straight Story.
Yeah, I look every time.
Seen a new copy of the Straight Story anywhere. I assume it's out there somewhere. And that's the thing. For me, I could just find some place to buy it online at any time. It's probably on eBay right now. I don't know the prices. For me, part of searching for
it's the treasure hunt
is the hunt. Yeah, that's.
So, I mean, like, even on streaming right now, I think the ones I named off you can find. Maybe not Mulholland Drive. I don't know. I've seen it on streaming recently, but Inland Empire, Fire Walk with Me, and Blue Velvet and Dune are on streaming right now. And I think Eraserhead also is. But I've not seen the rest of them. Maybe, which one is it? Didn't he do one for Disney?
The Straight Story.
Yeah, that might be on Disney Plus. I've not looked.
Oh, you know what? It's almost got to be.
No.
Actually, yeah, I think I did see that it was on there, and I mentioned that. And then Allison said, what's that one about? I haven't heard of that one. And I was like, an old man drives his lawnmower across the country to see his brother? Pretty heartwarming, I guess. Kind of a departure for him. Don't know why he did it, and I have not seen it.
Isn't that like the only PG movie he's done?
Probably, yeah. Except for his short films, which were unrated, which should be NC, don't anybody watch this.
I mean, you probably argue that the Twin Peaks may also have been, since it was for...
Yeah, like general audiences. It was on syndicated TV, but not rated as normal film rating, which has always baffled me. Like, why is TV doesn't get the same ratings as movies? But whatever. It's our stupid system. But we did eventually get a rating when somewhere around the time when NYPD Blue wanted to put the guy's ass on TV, and then just did it. So, yeah, I don't know.
But I don't think there's anywhere else we can go, because each movie we could sit and spend a whole episode talking about.
For sure. And that would have to be what you do. We could do portions of things. And there's been several borderline mainstream documentaries made about Lynch on a personal level or his professional approach to filmmaking. So,
which that can be found on streaming. It's on Max.
So the Art Life?
Yeah.
I actually have the Art Life, and there's a new... I don't know how new it is, but it's like Lynch and Oz. You seen this? Like, yeah. I think, I don't know that it's a Criterion Collection, but I've only seen it.
Maybe. I know that my copy of Inland Empire came with 2 short films about Lynch. So I think it was like Lynch approved that it was on the collection, but it wasn't Lynch that did it.
Yeah, the only place I've seen that at is 2022 is Barnes & Noble. So I don't know that it is specifically just for Criterion, but I think that it is a Criterion thing.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
So I think the ones are listed as Lynch and Lynch 2, something like that.
Yeah, I remember that, and I've not watched all of that. There's a lot. Like on the Criterion of Eraserhead, I had a separate DVD that had all of his short films on it. It was like maybe a Japanese bootleg or something, because they're not officially released. But it's really high quality, and like everything on it's Japanese except for like Lynch and a few other things. But I think they're included in, or at least most of them, in the Eraserhead Criterion on the second disc. And there's like one portion of just interviews that's like an hour long. Like there's Criterion Collection is so amazing. I'm so glad they're still making this, because like when they first started making DVDs, that was the point of it, is every DVD should include hours of deleted scenes, bonus footage, commentary, interviews, promotional footage, or like TV spots or whatever, just to have it archived in a way that you would have access to.
And it's preserved as the artist intended.
Yes, as like a time capsule, and maybe a gag reel, because people always be around on sets and they capture it. Why not look at people also have fun, especially on darker films, which is always like really strange to watch. Like if it's a comedy, they're already kind of like, it's already funny. Hopefully, there's like one. I just am reminded of. I watched this clip of Michael Cera arguing with the director on like, I think it was one of the Seth Rogen films. It wasn't one of Michael Cera's main films.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. I seen that clip the other day.
I read in the comments that was actually a joke, that they were just playing around, and he's like, well, if you want to direct the film, Michael, and he's like, yeah, I do want to direct the film, and they're like having a serious argument. But then I was reading in the comments that it's actually it was a DVD extra, and it was just as a joke. But of course, people put things on Instagram or whatever
out of context
and don't put any. They're just like, oh my goodness, look at this. So I was like, was it or wasn't it? I think it was knocked up. I'm not 100% sure it was knocked up, but I think it might have been. And I did not look into it further because I did not care. I felt lied to, and I wanted to punch the person who made that Instagram account. But whatever. I hope Michael Cera's doing okay.
Nah.
Yeah, I am not, because David Lynch died. And this is a celebration of his work, because we like so few other film directors out there. I just want to reiterate, if you get into this and it's your thing, you're in for not only a wild ride, but a lifetime of re-enjoyment and re-dissection of the work.
Honestly, I think that's one of the main reasons I am drawn to Lynch, is because it is so different from anything out there. It's just like, I mean, it's weird to say breath of fresh air, but kind of, in a weird way, because it's like any movie you watch, it's like, each director's got their own little touch, but, still basically the same.
Yeah.
Then you get something like his, and then it's just out there.
Yeah, not only is, like, certain directors have, like, a certain style, and, like, he is attributed with the new term Lynchian that other directors have at times tried to emulate, but there is a essence to his films that pervades film to film, but not all of his films are the same. Some people might make the argument, but like, you can't look at The Elephant Man, Dune, Mulholland Drive, and Inland Empire and say like these are all the same or whatever. And then also like Twin Peaks, any of the stuff from Twin Peaks is so vastly different. Elements, yes, like the use of surreal imagery, holding the camera on a character and making an actor like go on and on a little too long to create a sense of tension or whatever he was going for.
Some of the dialogue, almost like aliens writing for humans.
Yes, making it really stilted, unrealistic, so that it takes you, this is just some of my interpretation. I don't even think it's necessarily the same every time, but it's almost as if you really recognize what's going on, not what's being said. Because that's the thing too, is like you could say that almost the same thing about Tarantino or Kevin Smith, because people don't talk like that. And they would say, this is like you're watching, you're not watching something that's real, right? It's an elevated form of art. So why try and just write how people talk? Why don't we write some art and do something different? And that's what Lynch has done, but he's kind of taken the opposite approach with dialogue. So that's another thing that could be dissected and gone on and on about. That's a whole hour just talking about his dialogue, which I don't care to do right now. And that's the thing, like you said, every movie deserves its own, however long you wanted to talk about it. You couldn't just talk about a portion of something. Because
it's one of those things too, that each movie could be its own episode, and we could do multiple episodes on the same movie and have different outcomes each time.
Yeah, and you could probably not, but conceivably, hypothetically, have a debate and convince somebody else to feel differently or have a different interpretation of a movie each debate.
Yeah.
Or come away from like, oh, I hadn't thought about that one little thing, and it changes your whole perception of what that was intended to be, possibly, and maybe get closer. This guy, I think his channel is called Twin Perfect. He did like a 4-hour analysis of what Twin Peaks means, like top to bottom. Maggie Mae Fish came along and did like, I can't remember how long her video is, but it feels like it's as if she did like 20 minutes to say like, that was all bullshit. I don't believe any of it. And I thought that was hilarious because like he makes the guy in Twin Perfect, I can't think of his name, but that's the name of his channel, I'm pretty sure. He makes all these, it's almost like it too obvious. Like of an analysis, like when you take away certain things, and when that's the view, the lens you're looking at it from, that's not necessarily, especially with a guy like Lynch. Maybe on some of it, but then once you go into the extreme surreal imagery, who knows? And that's the thing, is sometimes I think there are times that not every detail truly matters to the ultimate result. Sometimes I think it's just him being weird. I really do think that
or to invoke an emotion instead of being a direct link.
Yeah, it could just be like a vague sense of something, not just like do this because of I want it to make you think about the radio waves that would have permeated through all of time and space. It could just be like, oh, but like behind this intense drama of like these kids like about to find out that Laura has died in Twin Peaks in like the first few scenes, and even though they don't know, they can feel the heaviness in the air and they know that something bad is about to be foretold. There's this guy in the background that does this weird like wiggle dance across the screen, and it's like that could just be, I think about like what high school was like, and that's what it was like, is like there's always somebody in the background doing something goofy and somebody somewhere else crying into their locker because they've just been broken up with or gotten a bad grade or just having a bad day because you're so emotional. And then there's other people who are like, I'm zany, look at me. I'm the weird guy that carries around a yo-yo. See, I can do yo-yo tricks. And that's life. That's real. And something like when somebody's like, oh, look at this. Did they never go to high school? Did you go to high school in like a capsule where you were plugged in like the Matrix and you just received all your information? Because life is like that. It's weird and chaotic and fun and heartbreaking all at the same time. And that's, I think sometimes people forget that random things happen sometimes. And not to say that some things that happen in Lynch films are completely meaningless. I think that's the meaning, really, ultimately, is that that's how things are in the real world. And to put in something so odd and sometimes off-putting or like out of nowhere is, we have all had those experiences, and anybody who wants to say they haven't seen something like that, like you're just driving down the street and a bird lands on your car and looks right in at you like they're the main character, and it's like, whoa, you remember that time that weird thing happened? That was crazy. Or like if you had a scene in a movie and that, I'm just saying, like two characters are walking down the street and then a car like drives into a building in the background and they turn around to look and they're like, what the f? And they just go on, and that never mattered. And that would be a focal point of every analysis. Like, what did the car mean? But where we live in Kentucky, I follow this page called WTF Louisville on Instagram. And I think about every 45 minutes, there's a car driving into a building that they post photos of from the news. Because it just happens. That's life. So if you put that in your movie, it wouldn't necessarily have to be have some cryptic meaning. It could just be you're making your film more realistic by adding randomness to it. So I think there's something that filmmakers could take away from that. If you want more realism, be less realistic, or the opposite, however you want to word that or think about it. And we all know that that's how things are. You might go weeks being isolated, going home to work, or just to the store and not see anything weird like that. But I was driving through Lexington and there was this guy in a Speedo and glasses one time, and he was just dancing on a street corner and like pointed right at me and made eye contact and just started like nodding his head. And I was like, yeah, bro, you do you. I don't know what that was about, but I know that if I made a movie and put that in it, that would be like, they would say, oh, that was like the secret, like Jesus archetype character who was telling him secretly, like, I'm choosing you. I don't know what interpretations people would come up with, but there would be vast, numerous, inaccurate. That's what I'm saying. Is like sometimes some of these things that people focus on the most and say, this is the linchpin, pun intended, to the understanding, and he just put it in on a whim. Or it was a second unit thing.
Yeah.
Or somebody else's decision to slip something in, and he was like, I love it. And that was it. And it doesn't really mean any real thing integral to the plot or the meaning or the interpretation of the final product. Anyway, I love David Lynch. He enriched us so much, and he left such a huge legacy of the films. And when you, like, don't discount The Return just because it was a TV show. Like, that was an 18-hour movie. And when you think about, like, he only put out so many movies, you know, like someone like Spielberg's, like, you know, churning them out left and right at times in his career. Think about, you know, like, that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, however many movies that could be chopped back up into. That was his, really, like, his final huge body, a chunk of work that he put out. And I think he directed all of it. There's probably second unit, and there's a lot of special effects in that, but he had final say on everything. So yeah, but don't necessarily judge somebody's body of work based on how much they did. Base it on what it was, and his was really meaningful to me, and has maybe had the most powerful impact on me, like giving me permission to be as weird as I want with what I wanted to do if I were to make any kind of film, short film, or any kind of media at all. When you think like, it's too much. It's got to have something grounded. It's got to be more like this. It's got to be acceptable in some way. Nope, it doesn't. You can do whatever. Be true to yourself. Be influenced by what you truly love. And if you put out something inauthentic to yourself, it will be recognized as that. People can see through that, and they will either view it as boring or inauthentic, and that's not good. Even if it's borderline unwatchable, make what is in you, and it will, you know, hopefully, if people enjoy it. If they don't enjoy it, it might just be misunderstood. David Lynch was not a mainstream film director. But if you go online and just type it in and look at when something was posted, you'll see stuff from before. I saw a lot of stuff from right before he died. I was going back and seeing, like, a lot of these people they didn't just jump on a bandwagon. They were already huge fans, and the huge fans love him to death. And sometimes people just make a random post about him. It wasn't just the day he died that people started. It's always been there, love for David Lynch, and it will always be there. So
yeah. I think that's where we'll wrap up. David Lynch will be missed. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think we'll see another director like him. But in the comments, I guess, let us know what your favorite Lynch film was.
What's your favorite David Lynch film?
Oh,
I think that's what I meant to say. And
probably Mulholland or Blue Velvet.
It's really hard to say. Mulholland Drive is tempting, but because it's probably just whatever I watched most recently. And most recently I watched Lost Highway, so I am still picking that apart, so it's the most prominent in my brain. And despite it feels more direct because there are fewer main characters in that than Mulholland Drive. Not that I just feel like I'm closer to getting it than I was with Mulholland Drive upon a first watch. I don't know. Yeah. I think really probably my favorite set of characters and story in general has been Twin Peaks. So I'd have to say, like, and this might, who knows, that might feel more like a cop-out, but, like, Twin Peaks is the whole chunk of Twin Peaks. I've gone as Dale Cooper multiple times on Halloween, and Dale as a character means a lot to me. So, yeah, I would say, and David Bowie's in the movie, and they reference him then again in The Return. So probably that as a chunk. I would probably just say that. And yeah, I know it's such a weird thing. Like, The Return was a TV show essentially, but I count it as a chunk of media. If you held me down and said you have to pick a movie, I wouldn't pick the movie Fire Walk with Me. I would probably right now go with Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive. It's hard to say. So anyway,
Yeah.
we'll leave it at that.
All right, we'll wrap up for real now. Give us a like and subscribe. It'd help us out a lot. Check us out on our social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram. We'll leave links in the description below. And until next time, see ya.